What is up? This is Gwun. If you're looking for a way to overcome fear of judgment and social anxiety, this video is for you. I'm going to be sharing the 5 steps that I have personally used to set myself free from my own experience with social anxiety and fearing the judgment of others. But before we get into that, if you're new here, this channel represents a path to personal freedom. So if you're looking for life-enhancing content and perhaps practical wisdom that allow you to live a more fulfilling and abundant life, this is the place to be. Consider subscribing. But this video is all about how to overcome fear of judgment and social anxiety. I won't describe the details of my own social anxiety in this video. I'm going to create a second one for that to give you a really quick idea. I was not able to have conversations and talk to even friends, let alone strangers, without experiencing massive, bucket loads of sweat coming off of me and my heart racing 1,000,000 miles per second. At the worst, talking to someone, even somebody I should be comfortable around, would cause me to feel numbness and tingling in my hands and feet, where my whole body would literally just go into resistance, and I hated every single time I would feel that way. So if the anxiety that you're experiencing is making you feel helpless and really boxing you into a corner and affecting the quality of how you're living your life, I just want to assure you that there is a way through that, and it can get better. It will require a bit of effort on your part, but there is a way through. And in this video, I want to share the 5 steps that have actually worked for me in overcoming my fear of judgment and social anxiety. Step number 1 to overcoming fear of judgment and social anxiety is to realize that on some level, everybody experiences fear of judgment and social anxiety. And why is this? Well, the reason is actually rooted in evolutionary psychology. If you think back in the day when we used to live in tribes and communities where we had to actually gather and hunt for food and water, what would it actually mean if you got kicked out of the group? You were judged unfavorably and ostracized, left alone to fend for yourself. Your chances of survival would probably plummet to close to 0, because all of a sudden you didn't have the strength of the group anymore. You had to find food and water on your own and shelter and actually fight off things like saber-toothed tigers and lions and stuff. And so being kicked out of a group and being disapproved of was directly related to our safety and security. And so fast forward to today, where the surroundings look different. We have tools and other things that are now kind of meeting our basic needs for the most part. Our brains have still evolved from that kind of thinking. And it makes sense when you think about it. Nobody likes to be criticized or judged and having our ego kind of in play and attacked. And a lot of this is because of where we originally came from and how we evolved as a species. And so fear of judgment and social anxiety is part of the human package. And on some level, everybody experiences these things. For those of us that are going through perhaps what some might call a social anxiety disorder, we have a heightened response. We have a heightened sensitivity to being triggered into that fight or flight response of being stressed at the slightest chance of judgment from others. And it's important to make the distinction that that feeling the anxiety in and of itself is totally normal. It's just this sensitivity that's a little bit out of balance for those of us going through social anxiety disorders or any of the other labels that we might have gotten. And so why might this oversensitivity and ease of being triggered have developed? Well, it can be things like being teased when we were growing up and being embarrassed in front of others. It could be getting punished as a child in a certain way, and that left a traumatic imprint in our subconscious mind. It could have been constantly trying to live up to certain expectations and then feeling that that was the only way to be approved of and to fit in. Again, it could be any of these reasons or other ones. And the interesting thing is that it doesn't really matter what the reason is or how sensitive you might be to experiencing social anxiety and being triggered in that way, because the approach and the way we overcome our fear of judgment and social anxiety is the same regardless. And so how do we actually do that? We overcome fear of judgment and social anxiety by proving to ourselves that we are safe in those situations that we perceive to be threatening. And how do we do that? It's one thing to know and just understand. You may have gotten the advice even that, oh, just change your thinking. You know what? People aren't actually judging you. They're not really paying attention to you. And you should just develop a little bit more confidence and self-esteem, and then you won't be doing the whole comparison thing anymore. If you're like me, none of that stuff worked. I mean, it was easy to understand and be like, okay, I can make that mental shift, right? But it was another thing to actually experience that on a cellular level, that in those environments that I was fearing judgment and being anxious, I'm actually safe. And so the practice at this point to overcome your fear of judgment and social anxiety is to lean into fear and anxiety and prove to yourself that you are safe and secure. Easier said than done, right? But the good news is that there are tools that we can use to make that process easier. And so step number 2 for overcoming fear of judgment and social anxiety is to change your goal from getting rid of the anxiety to getting really comfortable with it. And I want to ask you, what is the story that you have around your anxiety right now? And if you were like me, it was something negative, it was something that was ruining my life and that I didn't want it, and I wish I could be just free of this thing that was crippling and has brought so much unhappiness to my life. I just wanted it gone. And so asking myself, where did I get that kind of interpretation or story around anxiety from? Because it didn't feel comfortable? Because it didn't feel pleasant? Because anxiety in and of itself is a very natural response. It's part of one of the experiences and feelings that we get to experience as human beings. And so to label a natural response as something that is kind of an enemy to us doesn't really serve us, because what we resist persists. And what we're resisting at this point is essentially a natural response that our bodies are actually designed to do. If you think about back in the day when we were running away from saber-toothed tigers and lions, we actually needed that anxiety kick to give us the energy to increase our chances of survival in those moments when we were actually being threatened. And so don't make anxiety the enemy, because again, what we resist persists. And if we become anxious about being anxious, all of a sudden we become anxious of being anxious about being anxious, and it just snowballs from there. And so stop trying to push and reject your anxiety and change your focus from I want my anxiety gone to I want to just really be comfortable with my anxiety. Step number 3 to overcoming your fear of judgment and social anxiety is practice meditation. And if you did nothing else that I recommended in this video, do this one thing, because meditation will change your life. And in particular, there's so many kinds of meditations available. I'm talking about the mindfulness variety of meditation. So mindfulness meditation. And the reason why mindfulness meditation is so powerful for individuals that are going through really intense emotional experiences is that it allows us and gives us the opportunity to practice creating space around our feelings and emotions and physical sensations without judging them. Right? If you think about how we exist in the world today these days, we're always kind of rushing and doing things, always trying to get to the next thing without really being present and consciously bringing our awareness to what is happening right now. And the catch is that even when we do that, right, oftentimes we experience the now moment through a mental filter, a layer of judgment. If I asked you to sit in a chair for 5 minutes without doing anything, put away your phone, don't turn on the TV, just sit for 5 minutes, you would probably label that as an incredibly boring experience. Contrast that to the experience of, say, going sightseeing or going on vacation. We already label that as something that is incredibly positive, nourishing, and refreshing. We love vacations. And if I asked you what is your experience of anxiety, you've probably labeled it as something undesirable and negative that is holding you back in a lot of areas in your life. Can we experience these things, good or bad, without judgment? That's what mindfulness meditation is all about. And in this space of non-judgmental awareness of what we're going through, it allows us to put distance, for us to detach from our intense emotions and feelings that we may be going through, and allow us to realize and really know that we are not our feelings and emotions. We may be experiencing them. They may be passing through our body, just energy moving through the body. But those things are not us. Many people, when they experience feelings and emotions and thoughts and things like that, they identify with those things. I am my feelings. I am my thoughts. They've fused together with them, their experience and their identity. And what mindfulness meditation can do is allow you to create some separation and become the observer of what your experience is without any judgment or labeling. Just becoming aware, creating some space, allowing that energy to flow through without needing to react to it. And in so doing, the effect of the experience can be greatly diminished, which is very beneficial when we're talking about something like anxiety or fear of judgment, and being able to take action and do the things that we need to do, even when we're experiencing some of these incredibly intense emotions. And so practicing meditation gives us a tool to be able to start leaning into fear. Because again, the only way that you're going to be able to overcome fear of judgment and social anxiety for real is to prove to yourself experientially, again, leaning into fear and proving to yourself that you are safe even in those conditions and situations that you are dreading. Meditation is a tool to help you with that. Step number 4 for overcoming fear of judgment and social anxiety: retrain your body's relaxation response. What do I mean by that? For us anxious folks, our bodies tend to get out of balance, right? The anxiety response becomes like this hair trigger thing that even at the drop of a pin, this single conversation, someone looks at us, even us thinking about a social interaction, cranks up the level of anxiety that we experience. Our body may have forgotten how to bring up that relaxation response and state of not being in fight or flight mode, ready to fight for our lives. And so intentionally practicing relaxation is an important part of being able to overcome our fear of judgment and social anxiety. What we want is to create a increased sensitivity and perhaps a hair trigger response for our relaxation. And so how do we do that? Do the things that relax you the most. It's as simple as that. You can draw a bath, take a yoga class, meditation perhaps, practice some deep breathing techniques. It could just be lying on the couch, watching TV. Whatever it is for you, find the thing that really brings you into a space of complete joy, bliss, calm, and relaxation. And the trick is that when you're in that state, consciously acknowledge how it feels. Bring your awareness into the present moment. In that state, practice the meditation in that state. Feel the tension in your muscles and really just remember, this is what it feels like. And when you start doing that, consciously acknowledging how it feels to be fully relaxed, you're creating a relaxation blueprint for your body that it can later recall in situations where you're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, and stressed. Right? To be able to tap back into your body's memory of what it feels like to just let go of any tension and worry. That's what this step is. The key to practicing both meditation and retraining your relaxation response is to practice it when things are going well, when you are not anxious, when you are not worried or thinking about others' judgments. Because if you don't practice them when things are going well, there's almost no chance you'll be able to tap into those when shit is hitting the fan and you are experiencing that anxiety all over again. So practice on a regular basis. Step number 5 to overcoming fear of judgment and social anxiety is to face your fear. There is literally no way around this. If you want to be truly free of fear of judgment and social anxiety, we get to start leaning into fear. But now we have tools to deal with that, as scary as that sounds. If we've practiced meditation, we've practiced what it feels like to actually be comfortable and relaxed, we can start applying these in everyday situations, finding that non-judgmental awareness of our anxiety when it comes up, and then dropping into relaxation. So what might this look like in an actual situation? Well, the first step, when you feel an anxiety response coming up, where you catch yourself worrying and going into that cycle, catch it, and then tap into your meditation practice. Okay, I see my anxiety come up. Let me create some space around it and let it come up. I'm aware and I'm not judging it. My anxiety is just energy moving through my body, and I get to sit with it and be with it. I'm not trying to resist it at this point. I just want to let it unfold and see what that's all about. So we've created a bit of space between us and our anxiety. Remember, you are not your feelings or emotions. Now from that space, second part, ask yourself, am I actually safe right now? If the worst thing that I'm imagining and worrying about were to come to be, would my safety be at stake? And the answer will be no. You might want to say to yourself, I'm experiencing anxiety, I'm experiencing worry, but I am safe. I am experiencing anxiety, but I am safe. And when we acknowledge that, when we've acknowledged that we are actually okay, we're still anxious, but we're safe. Really let that land and then drop into that relaxation response. Just sink into it. Think back and recall to what your body felt like in those moments when you felt completely relaxed and at ease. Easier said than done, but we have an opportunity to do this now because we've detached from the overwhelming nature of the anxiety that we typically experience. And we've consciously acknowledged our safety. Now let's physically embody that by dropping into relaxation. And you can even visually imagine yourself in that setting that you've tapped into to really relax. Next step after we've dropped into relaxation is to congratulate yourself, because you've literally at that point just faced off with what is probably the scariest thing that you will ever do, right? a lot of people who don't have this kind of heightened sensitivity to social anxiety will never understand what it's like to really push up against that kind of resistance. So when you are able to get into that space of just, I've literally stepped into the lion's den, right? I've been able to observe my experience, acknowledge my safety consciously. I was able to relax. It still might feel uncomfortable, but what we're doing is building a mental habit. And when we get through all of that, congratulate yourself, because that's a huge accomplishment. Acknowledge yourself for that. Whether that's just doing it quietly to yourself in the moment, it's like, hell yeah, I just took on my biggest fear. Or you can actually go through a little bit of a celebration, treat yourself later on, but make sure you acknowledge that step that you just made to stepping into fear. And the last part of that is just to repeat. Do this over and over again, because again, what we are doing is building a habit, both mentally and physiologically in our body. Because a habit is what has been running the show up to this point, right? We get triggered by anxiety, something makes us experience this fight or flight response. And then we start going, oh my goodness, why am I anxious again? Why now? Why am I like this? Holy shit. And then we start beating ourselves up and hating ourselves for why we're being triggered so easily. And then this entire thing snowballs into a condition that really paralyzes us and has us hating ourselves. At least it did for me. And that was the habit that kept getting reinforced. And because I wasn't aware that I could control this process and have it unfold in a different way, I was just reinforcing that thought pattern. So what I'm describing to you in this last step with facing off with your fear is to build a new mental pattern and physiological response when you get triggered by anxiety. Okay, I've been triggered. Next step is to become non-judgmentally aware of what's going on. Okay, I've been triggered, I feel my anxiety, I see it, I acknowledge it. And then we consciously acknowledge our safety when that comes up. And then we get to relax, and then congratulate ourselves, and then just keep doing that over and over again until it becomes second nature. I do this on a regular basis, and I can get through that entire sequence in a matter of seconds, because it's so ingrained. And like any new skill, practice makes permanent, right? When you're starting off, this is going to be incredibly challenging and probably feel incredibly weird. You may be skeptical of this entire thing right now, but know that like any new skill, it gets to be practiced. Just like going to the gym, we're building that muscle over and over and over again, so that when we are placed in those situations where we're just hit with an overwhelming sensation of anxiety, our default pattern then goes to the practice. Meditation, we're centering, we're becoming aware, acknowledging our safety, we're relaxing, then congratulating ourselves. And after doing this for a while, I can honestly say that when I step into rooms now, I generally look like the most confident person in those rooms. The person that's most at ease. The one that's having fun and just goofing around and not really caring what anybody thinks. And it's cool because most people, again, remember, everybody on some level experiences social anxiety and fear of judgment, but the majority of people have never intentionally practiced facing off with their fear with a process like this before. So the fact that you're aware of this now, I'm telling you, if you practice this, you can not only overcome your fear of judgment and social anxiety, you can become more fearless, more confident than the average person who hasn't had the opportunity to jump into work like this. So I encourage you to dive in and really make this an ongoing practice. So there you have it. How to overcome fear of judgment and social anxiety. 5 steps that have literally set me free and changed my life. I sincerely hope that you got something of value from this video. Again, if you're new here, my name is Gwun, and this channel represents a path to personal freedom. And if you're looking for life-enhancing content and practical wisdom to really help you live a more fulfilling and abundant life, you're in the right place. If you're new here, consider subscribing. If you got something of value from this video, comment below. Let me know how it went. Until next time.